So in terms of meditation, how I see meditation is a way of getting in touch with, as best I can, with my inner self, so I can most use that to help other people. And so every day, as part of it, I go through a meditative state, which very often includes people with cancer, all sorts of disease. I have a whole list. It's a huge list I have to go through every day, split up into various countries, in various states sometimes. People I go through in my mind that I want to connect with, who have asked me to connect with them in order that some interactions can take place between us. And every time, that's a more formal meditation. Then before every one of these paintings and all that I do, I recreate that state again in order to make this work theoretically, that if someone looks at that, whatever is wrong with them, they will now no longer be in anguish, that the anguish will be alleviated. I'm not saying it's happened at all, but that's what I would love to happen. And very frequently, I have someone in mind, like that man who just died the other day, or this lady who just died in the Sharp Hospital, through the Sharp Hospital just recently. But always have someone in mind, hoping that sometime in the future, when we evolve enough, that when we do these paintings, or this music, or this photography, or this poetry, or this dance, or whatever it may be, it will have the effect of healing other people. That's the reason for doing it. Now, I believe that's why art exists. I don't think art exists for the ego of the artist, or to have to fill a space on the wall. You know, an art framer once said to me, he said, "You've got a gap there on the wall, that's a sin. It should have a painting." No, it's not there to fill a hole in the wall or to match the colour scheme. All art basically is there for healing purposes. Music starts with a lullaby. The mother's not interested in pitch and harmony, and so she's doing it out of love. Painting in our society, as we know, probably started about 35 to 50,000 years ago with the Lascaux caves and the ones before, the Paleolithic caves. And this was an odyssey that these people had to go through, these sufferers had to go through these dark, sometimes dangerous passageways, very symbolic, to get to this cave where suddenly they saw these images which were painted there by medicine men for healing purposes. And I'm not a caveman. I think sometimes my wife would like me to be, but yeah, that's another story. But it's to have this. Always art was for healing, and in those caves they had music. We don't know what they had music, and they would have had the precursors of what we now call dance and theatre and so forth, as they had the Dionysian temples and so forth afterwards. It's always been, until recent times, very recent times, in terms of our civilization, these activities have always been creative for healing purposes, and that's what we've forgotten today. So every painting I do is with this in mind. Now, a lot of my influences, people keep saying, "Gee, they look so oriental." They're not quite, but they sort of are. And a lot of the Chinese and the Japanese feel the same way. This sort of, not so much here, but they have a sort of oriental sort of influence. So I wrote a book about some of these ones. Some of them is Su She or Su Dung Po, Wang Wei, and the Nanga. Now this is part of the history of the art that somehow relates to what I do. So I'll tell you briefly about these people. Wang Wei was the first, it goes back 800 AD or so, Tang Dynasty in China, and he started what became one of the schools of Chinese painting. Then one of his followers later was Su She, Su Dung Po as he's also called. Now, these men were called literati. They were not painters, and they were certainly not artists. They were doctors, they were courtiers, they were scholars, one of them was a prime minister, they wrote herbals, they did all sorts of things, and they gave all their art away, as I believe, for healing purposes. Then 1,000 or so years later, the Japanese, and they were called literati, 1,000 years later, the Japanese Nanga tradition, which means, never mind, it is to go back to this early style of being simple, spontaneous, and just whatever is inside, just to put it out, so that you have an intention and you just do it. It does not require any particular skill, just the desire to put that into the world for healing purposes. Right, so that's what that is about. Now, where I usually paint, behind me here, there's a big Chinese rock out of a Chinese riverbed. There's a great big Chinese rock. And over here is the dried out root of a Japanese sakura, cherry blossom tree. So I'm triangulated by their energies all the time I'm painting. And very frequently over here, I'm thinking of the person looking at this who can be helped by it. And I have no idea what I'm doing. I can't tell you how I did these, or it's because Susan says, they really like that one, do another one. I said, I don't know how to do it. I don't even know, how the hell did I do that? I'm not aware. I look at it afterwards, and it's as new to me as it is to you now. I don't know. Now, I remember doing one line in that one, but it just happens. So it's like it's all done through me. Now, William Blake, I'm giving a talk to the Blake Society next year, so I'm doing a lot of stuff on William Blake. William Blake was happy to talk about that he was having this stuff go through him, not by him, which in the Japanese is called tariki versus jiriki, other power rather than self-power. Yeats can talk about this. A lot of people talk about it. Well, I feel the same way. It just happens through me, and I look at it afterwards. Sometimes I burst out laughing. How the hell could I do that? I don't know how it happens. I really don't know. These are all as strange to me as they are to you. No, seriously.
You're channeling.
Well, you can use that word. Yes, thank you. Shh, it's California. It's okay. Right. No. So it's all. It just. These things just happen. But always there's this meditative intention beforehand that it should be for healing purposes. That's the reason to do it. I'm not doing it for myself or even for gallery owners, but I'm doing it in order that people can somehow be helped by it. One day, long after my time, I hope somebody's going to say, that's what it's really for, and do what I can't do. Be guided as I haven't been guided, that it really does have its ultimate purpose, which is to be healing, to make us whole with our souls as it was 20, 30, 40,000 years ago and beyond. I tell you go out there when the La Jolla, with the cove, all those rocks, and there's all these people have scraped their names and their initials on the rocks, right? Yeah. Well, think about that. I've just been to Alice Springs in Australia, in the way out back. We go like about 15, 20 miles of this incredibly rough road in this four-wheel drive vehicle, which still you can only use half the year to get there. And there are these carvings in these rocks. And some of them, you say, well, what the hell some of them are just what you were there, David, like there's like a dozen holes there. It doesn't seem to have any real purpose for us. What did it mean? But for them it must have been a very holy activity. You don't go to all that trouble for nothing. It's not like carving your name. It was for another purpose. It was, in its own way, a way to be meditative, to be healing. And that's what I think it should be. I'm reminded of you working in the hospital. When I was, I can tell you some stories. When I was 5 or 6, I was thought to die. I had some illness. I think I was jaundiced. No one ever knew what it was. The records are long gone. But I was in for 12 weeks and I was supposed to die. And every day they wheel my cot out onto the grass, and I could feel my body being pulled into the ground. And in some way, I knew I was going to die. In some weird way. And then my father's best friend, who we called Uncle, they decided after 12 weeks to give me a direct blood transfusion. Have you ever seen a direct blood transfusion? I have. And I just saw it coming into me. And I have a cut down scar still here that I thank every day for it. And he said, Johnny, you'll go home in 2 days or so and you'll be a fisherman like me. And I went home in 2 days and I caught a fish off his boat a few days later. Now, I don't believe it was the blood transfusion that did it. But while I was there were two things. One is that my mother, she was not allowed to touch me. She was on the other side of this glass partition. And I turn, as she's leaving, I can see her crying, I'm crying. I turn on the radio. And there is a song composed by a very famous man from this area of Southern California who owned a baseball team. Hmm?
You were a kid?
No, now. A few years ago, he's dead now. Gene Autry. And he wrote a song called You're the Only Star in My Blue Heaven. And I got it in my mind just once. It was played on the hospital radio. And I heard it thousands of times. And we've taught this to thousands of patients around the world, this song, You're the Only Star in My, which to me was my mother, but you can make it whoever you like. The other story was in the corridor outside that I could see through the glass window, there were all these paintings of fairy tales. That was my first experience of music and art as being healing, because I know what difference both of those experiences made to me. I don't say it's why they were written, but it still had that effect. I think the effect would have been even more if that had been the real purpose, basically, for them doing it. We do go to a lot of trouble to make sure that these paintings are as high, my photography too, are as high energy as they can be. For example, we use a special perspex, very, very expensive German perspex, because it's the only one that doesn't interfere with the energy coming through. You can't use glass and regular perspex. We just had an exhibition somewhere else where they started to put up the paintings. Just, something's wrong. They were using cheaper perspex. I'm very careful, always, unconsciously, to balance yin and yang. And a little black works with a lot of white, because white has surrendered all of its colours, black still has them all. So a little bit of black balances a lot of white. Even there's much more white than black. Now, so in one sense, they're always balanced, but in another sense, can you take that one down? Is it easy?
Yes, of course.
In another sense, they're always left unbalanced. They're all balanced, yin and yang, but they're always left unbalanced. Because that's the bit for you to fill in. And if I ask people, I've done this many times, if you had to put something else, say a dot or something, where would you put it? And they always choose the same place. So it's always left because I want you to be active in the process. Not just getting it, but also giving it. Be active in the process as well. Right? So that's another example. Most of the examples. This one's a bit too complicated, but yes. So thank you. So everything, the particular inks that are used, the particular board that we use, which is very archival. You see, I love this effect. This is what's called, the ancient Chinese called flying white. See, there's a good one there behind you. See how it's flying white? You get that effect? And that's not easy to do with a lot of papers, a lot of inks and so forth. I love the sort of flying white. But here's the other thing I want to finish up with. The Japanese have a school of Buddhism called Tendi, T-E-N-D-A-I. Have you heard of it?
Yes.
Oh, I better be careful then. Okay. Right. And Tendi school says everything has spirit. Everything has spirit. Confucius, back in BC, said that everyone has Jen. We call it Jen. They call it Run. We call it Jen, J-E-N, which is benevolence, which is soul, humanity, whatever word you like. Then along came Mencius, who said it is as natural for men to be, and women, to be benevolent as it is for water to run downhill. Right? So we all have this capacity. We all have this soul, if you like, this spirit. And the Tendi school, which came along later in Japan, said everything has spirit. This glass has spirit. This book has spirit. Everything has spirit. Everything. Here's a stone I got from the beach down there today. Now, you may say this is a pretty stone. I tried to find a very ugly one, but we were called ugly, but I couldn't find one. But who said that? Exactly. There aren't any. So this is beautiful in its own way. Beautiful with a capital B. Now, the reason for a capital B is because our word beauty, we have beautiful ice cream now, we have beautiful this, beautiful that. But the word beauty comes from Latin beatus, meaning blessed. So part of my daily affirmation with all of these is beauty, blessedness, belovedness. Beauty, blessedness, belovedness. So this is, in its own way, beautiful. It is a blessing. It is spirit. It has spirit. And if it's a nice shape like this, a nice colour, it's easier to find it. But it's in that bag there. It's in your shoes. It's in that tripod. It's in everything. If we will just see it. But a beautiful sunset is easier to see the spirit than an ugly, cloudy, so-called ugly, cloudy day. It's just how we are, how we're programmed. So what I try to do is hope that all of these paintings will make it a little easier for you to see the spirit which is everywhere. But you can do it with a stone, you can do it with your shoes, you can do it with, God forbid, do it with your mother, but you can do it everywhere. But most importantly, with everyone around you. And so there it is. This is spirit. So these are just trying to make the sense of the spirit within you and with all a little bit easier to see, and therefore to be healed, not treated, but healed. So I'll stop there. Thank you very much. Thank you. Thank you.